And this is the banality of evil, actually. He tried to just do this kind of tweet where he was trying to be, he's trying to portray himself as though he was just like an ordinary man. Isn't it great that the summer's here and it's July or it's August or whatever it might have been? Maybe it was June. And he was grilling just like an ordinary man. Look, I'm a human just like the rest of you. I grill meat. I like hamburgers, do you see? I like having my beef with cheese on top so that I can have a cheeseburger. Not knowing that you've actually got to cook the burger first. Flip it over, cook the other side. Then you put on the cheese, and then you can kind of melt the cheese in the last sort of few seconds or a minute or whatever it might be. But because he put it onto raw meat, people were like, yeah, I don't know what's wrong with him. Like, even if he is detached from reality or he no longer walks or hasn't walked with the common people for a long, long time, I mean, do these people never do anything for themselves? I mean, do they have people who come over and barbecue for them? Or do they just always go to conventions or junkets where there's just food laid on for them? And like, you might ask the question, but why would he pretend to be an ordinary man? Well, I would say all liars have to lie to themselves. I think in the Seinfeld TV series, which I'm not criticizing necessarily, but it does give great insight into the Eskimo mindset. And it's funny and it's hilarious until you kind of realize that we are dealing with people who are, to greater or lesser extent, quite profoundly mentally ill. But just because you're mentally ill doesn't mean that you are incapable of having ambition for yourself. And these people are quite driven by ambition. And it's a self-aggrandizing character that they have. Or I was going to say spirit. And I'm fine with people seeing things through the religious lens like that. Because religion does describe it all, I think, if not better, certainly as well as any other way we have of describing it. And for the Eskimo, they don't really have... They're their own gods, or they want to be their own gods. I think Yahweh is not God the Father that Christians might think of. I think Yahweh might necessarily be the devil, but they don't even say the word God. They're frightened of him. I never understood why we need to be God-fearing. If God loves you and you love God, then he's happy if you're doing what you were created to do. And what you're created to do is not to live in moral squalor. It's to raise yourself up to be a noble, honourable, decent human being and to do the right thing for no reward or no promise of reward in the afterlife. You do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Because that's it. Not even to suck up to God or whatever. So if God doesn't like that, well then he's not my God. Do you see what I'm saying? Whereas Yahweh seems to be from the Old Testament, and I remember most Christians didn't like that, seems to be a capricious and cantankerous God who gets offended and then maybe says, I'm going to require a sacrifice, or I'm going to command you to sacrifice your son, or all this kind of stuff. Now, I think that they can capture that God, maybe inside their tabernacle, restrict him like you would a genie inside a bottle, or inside a lamp, and get him to do your bidding, use him as a weapon. I think that's the kind of God that the Eskimo would like to have. And I think that's why they're preparing the temple and things like that, something to house him in, so that they can wall him in, restrict him, and use him for their world domination ambitions. They want to copper fasten or ensure that once they have smoke as like a weapon, like if you believe in or imagine a nuclear weapon, just by analogy, you have the threat of unleashing what they call smoke, which as far as I understand it is just the Eskimo or Inuit name for the name that we call him, but they don't even say what his name is. Maybe it's Yahweh, who the hell knows? Pick whatever. But a rose by any other name would be as despotic, let's say. Whether he's Moloch or Baal or whoever, Beelzebub, Satan, Hasatan, whatever you like. Does it really matter? But I'm describing how he functions and how the Eskimo see him. Totally different to the ever-loving, sort of childlike image of a grandfatherly guy in heaven who loves everybody and loves his creations and wants the best for them and doesn't want to be sort of compelling people to behave any certain way. He just wants people to want to behave in a certain way. I think I used not to be able to understand that. I'm speaking to you as a person who isn't religious. I reject all religions now. I just, but I don't reject Jesus. Whoever he was or whatever he was, I believe he existed, and I believe they smoked him because he stood up to them. And I don't know if there's a God, but I hope there is, I guess. And I do understand that this is the way it had to be, I suppose. As much as I resent this world and this life, I don't think any of this could be explained to people. I think you have to experience it to understand. I'm sorry to say that. But that these lessons are difficult lessons. They're painful. But maybe there's no other way than to experience it. Can't just be told. But I won't go back over what he said there. You saw it. You can rewind and watch it again if you like. But you see their kind of prideful or boastful. Everything is about the aggrandizement. In other words, the false elevation of their own silly little personality or their ego. That's really what it is. It's stroking their own ego. The idea that his mother was a great matriarch and the Vikings came along and said, line up all your sons and daughters and great grandsons and granddaughters and whatever they were, all 32 of them. And so she obeyed that order, but it was only so that she could defy them, an 80-year-old woman, and go, we're not going anywhere. We're staying here. We'd rather be machine gunned down. Like, presumably, either the machine gun was there on its tripod or something, or they understood that they were ordering them on the basis of some threat of force. I mean, it's comical. It's like he's trying to make out that they were so brave and stoic and defiant in the face of these evil Vikings that it becomes comical. It becomes a farce. And he can't see that, so he looks ridiculous. And by the way, that's why they hate people mocking them, satirizing them, lampooning them. They don't like to be made fun of. They want us to be in awe of them and fear them. So absolutely laughter is, if not the best weapon, it's a great weapon against them. And then himself, like, my great grandfather or grandfather, whichever he's trying to say, came over in 1892, and then uses some Eskimo phraseology to say, like, Spock in Star Trek, live long and prosper. And of course, Star Trek is all Eskimo as well. That's Eskimo religion there as well, and Eskimo trickery and twisting things. And introducing utopianism and all that sort of stuff. In the original Star Trek I'm talking about, and on as it goes into the other series. Just to let you know, in case you hadn't thought of that already. But, then he has to turn it into how he inherited his grandmother's indomitable spirit. Because in his mind he wants to be the hero. As long as he fantasizes it in his mind, he's a hero. Rather than the pathetic, limp-wristed figure who's pretending to barbecue cheese slices on top of raw beef patties. That's really who he is. So in his mind, he must believe that he's this heroic character and saying, so I'm an American, I have a right to be here, that's why I'm here, and here I am. It's totally laughable, absolutely risible. It's pathetic. Like, it's a joke, but not a funny one. He is a figure of ridicule. And he might be on the cusp of realizing it. And I do think, that he is pretty much largely irrelevant now. Whatever way they have done of completely democratically, districts or completely democratically, whatever numbers in whatever way they do, all the different multiple ways, I think, he's a has-been even in the Senate, and I think most people have very little respect for him, even if he was the DNC chair or still is or whatever.